I wanted to give an update on the aftermath of the Afroman trial because a few days ago I had put out a video talking about a potential appeal by the police officers in that case. Now, Afroman has been memeing the police officers and now the attorney for the police officers here and had mentioned something about the attorney possibly looking into an appeal here. It says in the post, he feels the jury was unfair to the pedophile police officers, thieves, and liars. So we talked about that and why that seems like it would be a colossally terrible decision. I'm not really sure how that would be, better for them at all. The Streisand effect was very strong with the initial trial, but suggesting that the jury was sent there through some sort of divine intervention and then losing is, it's a weird look after that to, call them unfair if that's what they're going to do. But no actual appeal has been filed. I believe they have some time to do that if they wanted to challenge something. I was watching Defense Diaries last night. They had a really good show with Afroman's attorney and one of the jurors joining them to answer some questions. And I wanted to share some of what the attorney David Osborne said about the potential appeal. Like I said, this is a really good show. I'm not going to play too much of it here because I think everybody should go and watch it if they want to. There's a lot of good information in here, but I am going to play a little bit related to the topic of the appeal, and then again, one more time related to what the juror had to say about the judge's statements to them after the verdict.
About appealing, have you heard anything about potential appeal?
Bob had sent an email to the clerk of courts, basically requesting like information about jury selection and stuff. They had filed that email as part of the file. Our court does it when you request, like I'll eventually request a copy of all the video footage of the court and everything. And so you have to put in a motion, and they put it as part of the file so you can see what the attorneys are getting. It's not uncommon for us, you've been 2 or 3 years, you want to go back here what the original was, you would file for that hearing so you can listen to it and review. So they filed that as part of the case. Being that it would appear that where he's talking about the jury, he's called the jurors, it would appear that he's trying to set up something to nullify the jury is what the guess would be, but it's too soon to tell that because he still has to file the correct paperwork. And that's where Ethan and I put out a statement to that effect. No appeal is done until you file the correct paperwork.
And he's got 30 days from the judgment date to do that, I'm assuming.
I'm curious as to whether that was a contingent fee agreement, because if it was, and he's going to try to double down by appealing it, it just seems like folly to me. Lick your wounds, call it a day. And
that's what I don't understand about the idea of appealing. You can't untestify. Everybody's under oath. I mean, exactly. Brian's testified it's an opinion. How do you clean that up? I mean,
no, I don't think that you can. That's why they're coming after the jury as hard as they are. And I don't know what they think.
To what end? For us to have another trial where we just ask the same questions, and if you don't give the answer, we impeach you with your previous testimony?
Right. Exactly.
So I thought a lot of that was interesting since, I'm not an attorney. I like to listen to these attorneys, obviously, but I'm somebody who gives an opinion from a layperson's perspective or an observer. And when I read that post on Instagram from Afroman about the attorney looking to appeal, I thought, well, how would that even go? Would they end up doing another trial? And if they did another trial, they can't undo what they've already done, right? But like Dr. Osborne said here, what are they really going to do? Testify and say something completely different? Because then they could just be impeached with their prior testimony. Something else interesting that he mentioned there was that the attorney, they call him Bob, I guess, Bob was calling some of the jurors and at weird times of the night, or I guess what would be considered a weird time of the night in a small town where everything kind of shuts down at 8 o'clock. But if you want to hear more about that, definitely go listen to Defense Diaries. I'm going to pin a link to their podcast, this specific episode, in the comments below this video. I have heard some people say that it's normal for the attorneys or even the judge maybe to ask questions to the jurors after the verdict is given, but I don't know about calling them up long after the trial has ended. I mean, I guess it hasn't been that long, but still, you guys will have to tell me if you ever heard of that before or how normal you think that is. The juror that they had join them decided to stay anonymous. So her real voice, she said she wasn't concerned about using her real voice, but she didn't want to show her face and she didn't want to use her name. So they call her anonymous on this. She gives a little bit of insight into how it felt to be a juror who the attorney was Bob was trying to contact. And she gives some insights into why they made the decisions that they made, what they considered when they were deliberating. Another interesting thing I heard her talk about about was what the judge, said to them after the verdict was given. People commented that the judge didn't thank the jury before leaving the courtroom. He thanked like everybody but the jury, but apparently the judge did thank them, behind closed doors. However, the judge also gave the impression of not liking Afroman very much, which I think is inappropriate for a judge, even after the verdict is given. At worst, it signifies some pretty troubling bias, and at best, it gives the appearance of bias, which I think undermines people's trust in the courts and in the judiciary. But here's what she had to say about that. Bob and Allie, who run this podcast, Defense Diaries, they're also a married couple who are both defense attorneys, so they have a lot of interesting insights as well.
He come back and told us thanks, and he wanted to know what we got so hung up on. And one of the jurors told him it was the actual malice, and he wanted to know if he explained everything good enough. And we told him yes. And one of the jurors asked, do you think these songs and videos will stop now? And he said, look at him out there, his big ego, he's loving this and it'll never stop. Or he basically, we knew he didn't like him after that.
So you're telling me that the judge was asking you also kind of what went wrong?
Yeah.
Wow. I can't. He should have never asked you guys what you got hung up on. I'm shocked.
All of that's inappropriate. A judge should just be thanking you for your service and your dedication to the case and following the rules, and that's it. Starting to grill you guys and to kind of make that statement about the defendant, talking about his ego. Look at him out there. That is that is not, and David told us that is not a judge from your county, so that was the dude they brought in. Wow, that's more craziness.
So I wasn't there in the room, obviously. I can only go on what the juror is saying, and she's giving us her perspective of what happened. I put out a short on this clip last night and this morning, and I've had some people disagree with me because I called it out of pocket. But I do think what the judge said was out of pocket if it happened the way that she's describing. It's my personal opinion that it's highly inappropriate for a judge to make negative personal comments about one of the parties. I was not a fan of how the judge conducted himself and some of the ways that he inserted himself in the trial. I think that I'm not an attorney, so I always do wait and try to listen to what some of the lawyers who follow this stuff have to say about it. But I did get the impression, just as an observer, that he did not like Afroman very much and that he was, heavily wanting the cops to win this case. And it seems like I was not off on that assessment. And as somebody who's been, giving commentary on some higher profile trials on YouTube for a little while now, just a couple years, but I've been threatened with lawsuits over the words that I've used sometimes. And sometimes I don't feel that's justified, but you never want to deal with a lawsuit. So yes, I have to sometimes say things like, it's my opinion or it's my speculation. And I'll get people on, like TikTok or Instagram or whatever, where they get upset and they're like, why are you surprised? Why are you acting like this judge isn't racist or biased or whatever? I'm like, well, I have to kind of choose my words wisely if I would like to continue being able to do this without the threat of legal action, which would be very costly for me to defend myself, even if I'm in the right. And also because, like I said, I'm not an attorney. So there could be, like a dozen things that I'm just not aware of as far as how these things usually go. But my impression overall of that judge is not a good one, especially if he's saying those things to the jury after the verdict. You guys have to let me know, what you think in the comments about what the judge said, if you think it was inappropriate or improper, or if you think that it was justified or that it's not a big deal. It's good to get other perspectives on this too. So I have one more thing I wanted to show you. I've shown you guys this channel before. It's Kat Not Williams, and I'll pin a link to this in the comments as well. She had a conversation with a juror who also wanted to remain anonymous. I don't think it's the same juror. I'm not positive though, because like I said, anonymous. But she did a Q&A with them, and they wrote their answers to 29 different questions. And Kat breaks all that down in this video here. So you get some interesting insight into what some of the jurors were thinking behind the scenes. And I just wanted to update you guys on some of what I had seen since I made that last video about the appeal. All right, thanks everyone. That's all I got for now. As always, don't forget to hit the like button for me because that helps me out a lot. And I'll see you all next time. Bye.